What's up, guys? Craig Mack here, Liberty Bell Beekeeper. So it's a couple days away from April. We're going to be in the swarm season in the next couple of weeks, I'm imagining 2 to 3 maybe. So we're talking about swarm traps today. So I've made swarm trap videos before. My design is fairly the same as it's always been. This is the equivalent, well, it's 20 inches deep, so it's the equivalency of basically 2 deeps. But this year I knocked this down to 4 frames. And the reason I did that is because with 1 sheet of plywood, you can get 3 traps with this design. So I was able to get 6 traps out of 2 sheets of plywood. Now, for me, that's easy because I have all the tools and the equipment. I can do this work. It's not a problem. And for most people, this is pretty easy if you have a basic knowledge. It's just a box. Really not all that difficult. But I do these this way because I want them to last me a couple of seasons at least. And I like the idea of being able to transfer frames from my traps instead of having to do a cutout style trap. I mean, there's flower pot traps, bucket traps, tote traps. There's all kind of traps, and they all work great. It's not hard to catch bees, really. It really is not. So, however you choose to do it, because you'll catch bees. But for ease, for me, I run a lot of hives, and I sometimes don't get to my traps right away, or you know, I have 6 or 10 that I have out. So I'm not always able to get to them. So for me, having frames allows me some time to have the bees in this trap. That being said, if I were to catch a swarm in this and I was on top of it and I got there not long after it was there, I would take that swarm and rehouse it. But I also like to let the bees build in these traps because it makes the trap better. The more it smells like bees, because bees been living in it, the better chance of it has to catch more bees. So I'm not afraid to let my bees stay in this trap for a week and get it smelling like bees, and then transfer them into their permanent hive. I'll move this into the permanent location, but not move them out of the trap initially. And that has worked pretty well for me. It gives the bees a chance to draw out empty frames because swarms are itching to build. Lets them draw those frames out, start to get working, let the queen start to get working, and then transferring frames is like transferring frames in any other active colony. It's all good. So I'll post the specs for this in the description. But it basically knocked it down from 7.5 inches wide to 6.25 inches wide. Like I said, 1 sheet of plywood will get you 3 of these. And I started making a video and I screwed up my cuts, and I still might re-edit that video and just narrate over it. But for right now, I'll just give you the cut list. It's pretty much the same as every other plywood nuke video that I made. It's all the same process. You cut them all the same way. This one is just double deep. It's just a bigger panel. So if you want to reference something, you can go back and see how I did that in the nuke video, and it's because it's the exact same thing with this. For the most part, just how you make the cuts and how you get the most out of your sheet. So I made migratory lids for these this year, and they're also out of this 3/8 plywood. Now, because I use 3/8 plywood, I know this thing's going to bend and move. 3/4 plywood bends and moves. So what I did is I went and cut some blocks that I'm just going to slip down and inside of this trap, somewhere down below the frames, and give that a little glue and maybe a couple of staples, and that'll just help keep the box from warping. You know, it will move. This will move. And the same goes for the lid, but for the lids, I think I'm going to cover these in Flex Seal. I got a can of Flex Seal that I've been sitting around on and haven't used, and think it might be a good application to do it on these. I know the stuff works. I've used it before, so it's probably a good idea to do that. The other thing I did with these is I upgraded to steel for my hanger bracket. It's just 1/8 inch steel, cut the 12 inches, drilled out with 1/4 inch carriage bolts and lock nuts and a washer. So these straps, I'm hoping, are going to last me a good while. It's a stain sealer on the outside. I could always paint these over again or add more stain and sealer, but that stain and sealer seems to have worked well with the other plywood hives that I've made and keeping the longevity. It doesn't work as great on the lids because that just gets constant full sun on it, and I have some delamination on a couple of these plywood migratory lids that I made. And I might just, scrape that off and do the same thing, add that Flex Seal, and then I'm never going to have to worry about those lids ever again, essentially. They're not migratory. I'm not moving them around, so they don't really need to have, that rubber is not going to affect their transport or the difficulty of transport. But as far as an entrance hole, you can see here I have just screen and a couple of thumbtacks. You can make a door. You can buy the disc doors that have the opening and you can close them off for transport. There's plastic ones, there's metal ones, there's any number of ways to close this hole off when you're transporting your swarm trap. Generally speaking, I just take a piece of this screen and a couple of thumbtacks and that does the job. A piece of tape works, but this to me gives them a little bit of air. But it also, I know it's not going to come off. There's a potential for tape to come off in transport. Some people will just get a mesh bag. There are those mesh bags for transporting hives. Another good option. But for me, I'll go back at night, get the bees inside if there's any outside, and then use this screen, and away we go. So there it is. 4-frame swarm trap, primed and ready. Now, one thing I did with this that's different this year, is I made myself up some Swarm Commander wax. I had a bottle of Swarm Commander. I like Swarm Commander. It works well. It's worked well for me the last couple of years. So, I had a bit left over in another bottle. I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 drops. So, I dropped that in and made 4 or 5 of these beeswax with Swarm Commander in it, and I took this and I rubbed it all over the inside of the hive, bottom of the lid, everything. Anywhere you can get that smell, it works. So I'll just take it and, like I said, inside of the hive, all over the place, under the lid. If this is too much work for you and you don't want to rub it in like that, melt it down, paint it on. That works too. You don't have to coat the entire thing. If you're going to melt it and paint it, you don't have to coat the entire thing. I might just maybe run the corners of the inside, something easy. You don't need to completely coat that thing with wax or with Swarm Commander. Coop, give me a break, buddy. But it works really well. He's barking because this one has a bone that there's 3 of. 1, 2, 3 sitting right there. Life with a hound dog. So quiet down, please. Let me finish off. So there we go. Swarm traps. It's happening soon for me, so I'm getting these ready, and not all that difficult. Bunch of ways to make them. This is how I do mine. It's done me well. They last you several years. You can refurbish them and keep them going strong for you. Best of luck with all your swarm trapping. Get out there and get them free bees. Have some fun catching them because it's a blast. And make yourself up some decent swarm traps. Not a bad idea to keep around your own bees too, because you never know. Sometimes they sneak up on you. If you have the chance, hang a trap somewhere near your other bees and you might catch another swarm. Later.